Welcome back. Now, thousands of mourners continue to pay their respects to the late Queen Elizabeth II. Yesterday, the hearse carrying Britain's longest-serving monarch was driven from the Balmoral estate. It made its way through Aberdeen and Dundee for the capital, Edinburgh. The 96-year-old's oak coffin was draped in the Royal Standard of Scotland. She will lie in state for 4 days. Her state funeral is set for the 19th of September. That's next Monday. UK correspondent Sally Patterson joins me now to tell us a bit more about what's been happening across the UK since the Queen's passing. Before I talk about the fact that the King Charles III, has been receiving messages of condolences in Parliament, Sally, tell me exactly what it is that's been happening around England since the Queen's passing.
Well, as you say, the Queen's coffin was brought from Balmoral in Scotland, where she died on Thursday, and there was a very slow procession across Scotland, which took around 6 hours and allowed for people who lived in the area to come out and have that moment to watch as her funeral procession went past. Most people stood with their heads bowed in silence, in respectful silence, many wearing black. Remember, for many people, she was more than just a head of state, because people who lived in the area may have seen her come out over the years. She spent many, many happy summers at Balmoral. It was thought to be one of her favourite places to be. And so for many people, they had the honour of meeting the Queen on one of her visits there in local villages and around the area. So she, in some ways, was a neighbour as well as a head of state. And so they watched as she made her way to Edinburgh, where she was her coffin was taken and laid at the Palace of Holyrood House, where it lay in rest, and that's where it remains. And as you say, I'm going to have to get used to saying King Charles III, of course, is now making his way to Edinburgh with the Queen Consort, and they'll be heading over there as we speak in order to go and meet her coffin.
And we know that there's been a lot of messages of condolences from the entire Commonwealth since the Queen passed away. But today, the King and the Queen Consort actually arriving in Parliament to receive messages of condolences from the Speakers of the Commons and the Lords. What exactly did all those people tell both family members?
So the King was earlier today in the famous House of Parliament just behind me, that very iconic building. And as you say, the speakers of both the House of Commons and the House of Lords had the opportunity to address the new King and the Queen Consort for the first time in their new roles. And they sat on thrones in Westminster Hall, which may not be one of the best known parts of this building. We're used to seeing the House of Commons with green benches where we see members of Parliament debate every week. But the Westminster Hall is in fact one of the oldest parts of the building and has seen many heads of states over the years. It's seen former President, even Nelson Mandela, gave a speech in that very room in 2003. So it really is a historic room just behind me. And that's where the King and his wife sat and listened to messages of condolences from both the Speaker of the House of Commons and Lords, who shared their sorrow and shared their memories of the Queen. And the King was also given an opportunity to respond to their messages. And he spoke about the importance, of course, of democracy, which, of course, takes place in this building every day. And so what we have in the United Kingdom is that head of state alongside a lively and thriving democracy as well. And so today we have the opportunity to see those two parts meet behind me.
And Sally, what are we expecting in terms of the Queen, of course, lying in state at the moment? What are we expecting to happen between now and Monday when she is finally laid to rest? Besides the royal family and all the visits that they're going to have to make and all the videos that are going to be taken of them as they, listen to people giving them messages of condolences, what else are we expecting to see before Monday on the big day?
Well, it's certainly going to be a very busy period over the coming week. The King is, as I said, on his way to Scotland to be in Edinburgh, where he will walk behind his mother's coffin as it is brought from where it is at the moment to St Giles's Cathedral. And it's there that it will lay overnight. And residents of Edinburgh and Scotland will be able to have their opportunity to go and walk past that coffin themselves, again offering them that moment of reflection, a moment to be close, physically close to the Queen, who was such an important figure in so many of their lives. The coffin will then be brought back to London, where it will go to Buckingham Palace, and from there it will then be brought just behind me to Westminster Hall, where residents of London and England will have the opportunity, and probably really people from around the world who I'm sure battling to get into the capital as we speak, because they'll have their opportunity as well to stream past that coffin. Now, where I am, just in central London, there's already a very high number of security personnel who are gearing up to that mass of people heading to the streets. And in fact, I'm already seeing signs around me which are talking about where the line is going to be. That will be the end of that procession, of that queue of people who will be waiting to go and see the Queen's coffin themselves. And that's expected to be several miles long, and people are being warned that they're going to need to be standing for several hours, and they're going to need to bring their own refreshments because they will be there for an incredibly long time. But I wouldn't be surprised if thousands and thousands of people do risk it to come and have that moment for themselves.
And just lastly, out of interest's sake, Sally, I don't know if you have any information or you know about this. I read an article written by a historian who is saying that even though King Charles has assumed that position, it doesn't necessarily mean that we'll see him donning the crown just yet, because he still has to go through his mourning period.
Well, as you say, the King, of course, became the monarch on the day, at the very moment that the Queen passed away. That was hereditary. That happens automatically. That didn't need a ceremony in order for him to become the official king. However, the next day we saw him officially proclaimed king, and that was the first ceremonial message that we saw of him becoming king. And then his actual chance to properly become sort of a public figure in that way won't probably be until next year. So there's a whole stage and many phases by which he takes up that role, even though he is a king by blood. And there are all sorts of things that will happen in that time. For example, the country is of course in a state of mourning at the moment, which means that flags are flying at half-mast and people will continue to wear black. But when he is declared king, that will be a chance for celebration, and so flags will return back to full capacity. And so it's in a way a very interesting time where we're in mourning but also celebrating our new head of state.
History definitely unfolding before our eyes. At least you and I get to see it, because of course Queen Elizabeth II is the only monarch that we've known for so many years. So at least now we get to see exactly what happens with the English royal family. Thank you so much for speaking to us. That was UK correspondent Sally Patterson there.